Alright, I wanted to shoot a quick video in which I'm gonna talk about something that I find very important for everyone's life. And that is to surround yourself with people who are a lot smarter than you are. Now, I actually got that idea for this video from listening to a very interesting podcast. I love listening to podcasts in general. I think they're a great source of knowledge and inspiration. And one of my favorites is the Freakonomics podcast. It is made by the two authors of the Freakonomics books, Stephen Dubner and Stephen Levitt. And in the last episode, I'm also going to put a link to that episode down here. There. So you can click on that and check it out yourself. But on this episode, they talked about city planning in general and about reshaping the downtown of Las Vegas in particular. They talked about that because it's an ongoing project right now. The CEO and founder of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, who is a multi-millionaire, if not billionaire, I'm not sure, but he's a very rich guy. And he decided to put a lot of his own money into redesigning downtown Las Vegas. So he says in the podcast that he was inspired by a guy who wrote a book about how the city influences our society and how cities shape the way we act and the way we feel within our society. And that guy is called Edward Glazer. He's a Harvard professor, he's an expert on cities, and he wrote that book that inspired Tony Hsieh. So they also interviewed that guy, Edward Glazer, and they were asking him questions like, what are your favorite cities in the world, and so on and so forth. And they also asked him, which I found very interesting, they asked him whether or not he would be willing to move to downtown Las Vegas himself. So with his family and with his children, just move to downtown Las Vegas, which on first glance might not be the perfect fit for a distinguished Harvard professor for economics. So what was very interesting was the answer that guy gave. Edward Glazes said that the most important criteria for him in whether or not he likes an environment and whether or not he would consider moving to that kind of environment is whether or not there are opportunities to surround himself with people who are considerably smarter than he is. Now, let that sink in for a minute. A guy who is a very accomplished scientist who wrote very successful books in the past, who is a Harvard professor, makes it his main priority to surround himself with people who are a lot smarter than he is. And he also wishes that for his children and for his entire family. So, an expert on cities who says that this is his main priority, I mean, that's something very unique, I would say, and very interesting to consider, since he's not saying that it's important for him to, have nice playgrounds for his children or to have like a short way to work and good public transportation or whatever you could expect from a guy who is an expert on cities. No, he says the most important thing is to surround yourself with people that you can learn from, people who inspire you, people who you can look up to, people who can become your role models eventually. And this is what is most important for him within a city. I find that highly fascinating, and I try to live by that rule as much as possible. I try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me and people that I can continuously learn from, which takes some effort. You gotta acknowledge that this is not the easiest way to take. Of course, sorry. Of course, most of us don't like to feel foolish around people who are just a lot smarter and know more than we do. So we try to avoid surrounding ourselves with people who might make us feel foolish a little bit and confront us with what we don't know rather than what we do know. So it takes some effort to surround yourself with these kind of people, but in the long run, of course, you profit so much more from surrounding yourself with people that you can learn from than with people that you cannot learn anything from, and people who might even hold you back in a way. So I find this answer that Edward Glaser gave very, very fascinating, and even more so because it comes from a guy who already accomplished a lot in his life, who obviously is a smart guy. I mean, he's a professor at Harvard. He cannot be completely dumb, right? And yet he's looking for new challenges and new ideas constantly. And he tries to surround himself with that kind of people. So if that guy thinks that he has still a lot to learn and that this is his main priority in the environment that he chooses to live in, then obviously all of us also have still a lot to learn and should think twice about the kind of people we surround ourselves with and the kind of environment we choose to live in. So keep that in mind and talk to you soon.